Hi there, hope you had a wonderful weekend, and welcome to this episode where we're going to talk about a topic that was suggested to me. Somebody asked if I could talk about restless leg syndrome, which I'm excited to talk about. I'm going to talk about what I was taught when I was in sleep fellowship and what I believed for many years and what I believe now. Much thanks to actually this book, and I'm going to read to you from this book some things that really wow, this really struck me when I read this book maybe a year and a half or 2 years ago or so. Before we jump into this topic, though, you may be thinking, hey, Daniel, Friday you said you were going to talk about the token and signal teaching that you were so excited about. What happened to that? I am super excited about that. I just didn't have time today to prepare properly for that. So it will be probably next Monday or the Monday after that. We'll go over the new token and the signal teaching. But today, yes, restless leg syndrome. Now, this book that I showed you, it's called Unlearn Your Pain by Howard Schubiner, who's an MD. And this book was suggested to me by one of my clients who said that, wow, she said wow, the way you teach around insomnia is so similar to what I'm reading in this book about pain. That made me curious. I bought the book and I thought there was a lot that was really, really interesting. I thought that was a really, really interesting book. And I would say the big picture, Dr. Schubiner's, what he proposes is that many of the things we experience is what he calls mind-body syndrome, which is basically the same thing that I call inner struggle, or sometimes I call it now lately I've been leaning towards this signal phobia. But basically that we have this kind of inner struggle that creates suffering for us. But he calls it mind-body syndrome. But the idea is very, very similar. Now, on page, what is this? In chapter 2, page 19, he goes over conditions that are commonly caused by mind-body syndrome here. And he mentions chronic pain syndromes is kind of, the main topic, where he mentions headaches, back pain, whiplash, fibromyalgia, chronic abdominal and pelvic syndromes, and more. And then he says another topic he calls autonomic nervous system related disorders. He mentions irritable bowel syndrome. I think that's the most common one. Irritable, this one too. Interstitial cystitis, which many people I think refer to just as irritable bladder syndrome. And then he also lists insomnia, chronic fatigue, tinnitus, dizziness, anxiety, depression, OCD, post-traumatic stress disorder. So very similar thinking to mine. Very similar thinking that these all come from the same place, which is basically experiential avoidance. There's something we want to avoid, and the more we try to avoid it, the more that becomes amplified. Now, here's the thing. When I remember distinctly that he mentioned the word RLS, restless leg syndrome, in the book, but I can't find it. It's so weird to me because that's what struck me more than anything else. But I can't actually find him mentioning the word RLS. I did find him talking about them in a blog, and I do find him saying this, and this is probably what I read. He said, where is it again? Oh, here. As part of MBS, we can have burning of the mouth, the ears, hands, or feet, tingling or electric sensations in almost all parts of our body. And probably this, when I read this, tingling, in the context of all this, I was like, this is, I think he's talking about RLS. I think his thought process is that RLS is part of this too. And so that really, that struck me, because what I had been taught as a sleep fellow was that, with RLS, there's something with iron metabolism that is off, and we have some evidence of that. And there's something with dopamine metabolism that is off, and we have some evidence for that. And so I thought, okay, there is some purely physiological or pathophysiological mechanism there that creates this syndrome. That's basically how I thought about it, and we treat it with this anti-Parkinson type medications. Now, reading this book, I started to ponder this, and I saw that there were some hints that RLS may be more of this MBS syndrome, or more of an inner struggle thing. And I listed 3 things. One of them was actually something one of my attendings said when I was in sleep fellowship. He was a neurologist, and he said the thing that he found kind of frustrating with RLS and treating RLS is that he said anything will work. Any medication you prescribe for it will work, he said, but just for a little while. a couple of weeks, a month later, something, the patient will come back and said, this stopped working, And this, of course, sounds very similar to, for example, insomnia, when somebody has found that, oh, this worked for a while, this worked here and there, this started to work, then stopped working, etc. Very, very similar. This kind of like many things work, but only for a while. That's kind of a hint to me. And then we have the story of RLS, which I found actually when I pondered this, like it's remarkable similar to the story of a panic attack or OCD. And I want to illustrate that. We can think of a panic attack this way, that there is some sort of discomfort, either it's a thought or a palpitations or something like that. Or when it comes to RLS, there's this tingling in our legs, let's say. There's discomfort, right? Then we have a safety behavior, because we think of this experience, this tingling or the palpitations, as we have started to think of that as dangerous. It represents something is not right, something is dangerous. This is not healthy, this shouldn't be happening, right? So then we have a safety behavior, which for restless legs is typically starting to walk around, getting up and walking around. Or for a panic attack, it may be actually the opposite, like sitting down or breathing in a paper bag or holding on to something like that. That's the safety behavior. And then the brain starts to think, okay, this is probably fine. We're probably safe now. And the trigger, like the discomfort is temporarily reduced, which we can think is like, that's a good thing, right? But in reality, we have taught the brain by trying to escape that there was some real danger there. Like we get out of some real danger. So the thing that the brain was, concerned about seems even more so like a real danger, a real threat now. And because of that, it actually becomes amplified. It happens more and more often, right? So this is a great similarity between, like, again, panic attacks and RLS when you look at this way. And also that over time, there's just more and more effort required to quote unquote control symptoms. And this is common with RLS, that you start with certain medication, then you add a second medication, then you double the dose, then you triple the dose, and like eventually, the symptoms come back. And this, again, to me, is so similar to, for example, insomnia, where there is no real danger. But when we start thinking that way, we need more and more, effort to sort of pacify our brain to think that it is safe. But eventually the idea that we're not safe comes back, So, this kind of really made me, shift my thinking about RLS and think of it as like, this could really be, he's probably onto something. Like, this is probably an MBS thing. But one thing that was on my mind, when I pondered this, was that in some patient populations, there really seemed to be a lot more RLS. For example, in people on dialysis. Now, if that's the case, then that it may seem to like contradict what I just said, that, okay, if a certain patient population has more RLS, then there is something pathophysiological there that is different apart from how we think about it, right? So they do have more RLS, or do they? Maybe not. So here's what I'm thinking. And, Dr. Schubiner points out in the book that, when he talks mainly about pain, that pain is, of course, it's real. There is some pain. There's not like it's just our imagination. I think it's the same thing with the tingling. The tingling is real when we, for example, are in dialysis. Like when we're in dialysis, a lot of like that creates a lot of changes in our, in the levels of like neurotransmitters and minerals and other substances in our blood. And clearly that can create tingling, right? So I think actually there's no surprise that people in dialysis have more tingling in their extremities, including their legs. But tingling, I'm sure it can be extremely uncomfortable. But as uncomfortable as it can be, this is tingling. Like, this is not a self-perpetuating, ongoing struggle, which sustains itself like RLS is, in a very similar way that we can think of dialysis as very much causing sleep disruption, because you have to get up super early one day and not the other day, and the changes in your body can make your sleep disrupted. But this is also not insomnia. This is not a self-sustaining, ongoing, self-perpetuating struggle. So, I think of it this way now, that the tingling can come from, other places than, just this kind of perceived threat or the fact that we're scared. It can start from something else, but that's not what creates what we call RLS. That's how I see things now. And by the way, nothing here, of course, is medical advice. It's just me sharing my thoughts Don't base any decisions when it comes to your health on what you hear here. Always, when you're concerned about your health, talk to your doctor. But finally, I want to say that what I believe now is that indeed, we have unwanted, unpleasant experiences, and they are real. When we aren't afraid of them, when we don't interpret them as this means I'm ill, this is dangerous, this shouldn't be happening, then we're not going to create that ongoing struggle for ourselves. And we have more and more peace. That is how I see things now. So I hope this was helpful to you. Let me know, as always, in the comments what you thought about this, and if you're finding your way to where you want to be when it comes to insomnia or RLS or anything else. That is wonderful. Please share it with us. If you're struggling with insomnia, though, and you're not really seeing things get easier, and you feel like it's a lonely path, you'd like some support on your way to where you want to be, then head over to our website. Check out thesleepcoachschool.com. Check out our coaching options. And if you decide to join, we look forward to seeing you on the inside. That's it again. Bye for now. Look forward to having you back here real soon. Ciao, ciao.